Okay, yeah, let's get into it. So I've got a few photos I'm just gonna do a semi-rough kind of edit on. I'll be going quite slow compared to normal just because I'm going to be running through what I do, how I do it. The main focus today is just on something called frequency separation, which I'm going to show you. This won't be too long, maybe just over an hour, just because I want this video up so I can refer to it for you guys so you can go back and have a look at it if there's something you don't understand. But yeah, basically, so we've got 3 images, oh, 2 maybe, that we'll go through, but we're starting with this one and I'll get right into it. So just ignore the shining of my face at the moment. Hot day here in Perth and I have no air conditioning. Yep, so this is just first nice simple shot straight out of the camera that I'll be playing with. This is Shell. She comes over from Melbourne to see me shoots. So what we do, basically we've got our core image here. I like to leave these so that I've always got the original just to look back on, just to make sure I'm going in the right direction and check that everything's still looking realistic. That's my main thing with my editing. I like to keep everything as realistic as possible. I don't really do the body warping and shaping and things like that. Okay, so first thing I do with any photo, as long as I'm happy with the color balance of everything, this one's good, is I get right into my frequency separation. Okay, so what we do is we duplicate our main image, our background image, twice. First one, sorry, the first one we're just going to call, you can call it whatever you want. This layer's purpose is to be the colors and the tones of the shot. Okay, with frequency separation, what we're trying to do is we're literally separating the color and tones from the texture. What that means is if we're trying to edit, replace things, heal patches, or they remove scars, things like that, adjust colors, we're either dealing with just texture or just color. Actually does make things quite a bit easier. The main reason I do it is you can really keep in as natural as possible, and you'll see that as we go. I think there's not going to be a whole lot of things to edit in this shot. Like I said, I like to keep things real. I don't want it to look like she's made of plastic or porcelain or anything like that. But I do want to make sure we keep the texture in. Okay, so we've got our bottom layer there. We'll just call that color. Top layer we're going to call texture. Okay, our color layer, all we want to do is we want to edit this. Now our focus is the skin, so we want to make sure we've got a good view on the face there. We want to add a Gaussian blur, so go filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and all we're doing is blurring to the point where we can no longer, just past where we can see these skin details basically. Usually, depending on how close you are to the subject, kind of defines what your radius is going to be. I'm fine, for me it's usually around 5.2, but with this one, because her face is a bit smaller in the shot, we can probably around 4.8 for this one. It's working pretty well. And that's all we have to do for that layer. For our texture layer, a little bit more complicated. The goal of this is for the texture layer, when it's applied to our color layer or blended with our color layer, it should come out looking exactly the same as our background layer. We're just splitting this single image into 2 different elements. Okay, so we want to go for this one, image. We want to apply image, and we want to apply it to the image, so the color layer, the blurred layer. All right, so color, we want to change our blending mode to extract, and the other details here, we don't need to change those. In all honesty, it's a tweaking and playing. I don't know why these work, they just work. Does exactly what we need. So what we come out with is what looks kind of like a high pass filter. It pretty much is. And we're going to be applying this to the layer below, and that's going to give us back to our original image. Okay, so all we need to do now is our blending mode, go down to linear light. Now if you look, I'll put these two in a folder. These two combined should look exactly the same as what we've got underneath. Okay, simple as that, but it means that now we have a color, just a color and tone layer, and we have separately our texture layer. And like I said, with this frequency separation, it allows us to adjust and edit just the textures or just the color. Okay. So what we're going to do now, I usually start on the color layer. Now all that means is for a while it's going to look like this photo is terribly out of focus. It's not. This is just our color texture layer. I'm also getting used to working with a tablet and pen at the moment. I'm old school, so I've always done things with a mouse, but it's time to catch up. So I like to use this patch tool on the side here. You've got three options, really main ones, but I use the patch tool or the healing brush. The patch tool's nice because it lets you select an area, then drag it. Oop, I've got to be on a layer first. We're working on our color layer, and it lets you drag and sample from a different area, and Photoshop will blend that in for you, which is great. So here we're just looking for discoloration, sort of anomalies in the skin. Got a slightly white spot there. So I hold down space and drag the cursor around. I find that this is really, really useful, because if you just sit there looking at it, you tend to miss out on things because your eyes get used to everything being where it is, and kind of your mind fills in blanks. We've got a bit of speckling there. There's a few ways of doing this. This one is a bit more time consuming, but I like to take my time on these things. This isn't sort of the thing I'd do if I was editing just for Facebook or just for web things. For the final pieces, something that might be getting printed or that. Normally I'd come back and do the background last, but we can go through and do this. The healing brush itself is similar, but all we're doing is we're sampling an area first. So you hold down Alt, click, and then you click over the place you want to put that sample. But for the most part, I stick with patch tool. Okay, so it's pretty clear in terms of color and tone. You'll hear me say again a lot, but again, I'm not being too pedantic on this because I do want this the natural deviations in the skin color, the changes, the slight blotchiness we get sometimes, all in trying to keep it as real as possible. My goal for any sort of photo I edit, except for the sort of more fantasy based stuff where I'm sticking wings on things and stuff like that, my goal is that when someone comes and looks at the photo, they don't just sit there and go, oh, this photo's been retouched or it's been airbrushed. Like, you shouldn't really notice. Sometimes you kind of feel like, oh well, what's the point then? But when you see the photos next to each other, or especially when you see them on top of each other, really makes a big difference. We're not too as well when you're editing, you might tend to go in quite close. Just remember that some things you're not going to see. If this was for web, that little white spot down there really doesn't matter. But we'll go in, and you want to watch around the edges here. Sometimes if I do this, I'm going to be pulling a bit of color in from the side there. So if you're in a position like that where you can't get a clear line in between, then the best thing to do is overlap and find a similar piece to pull in. Then that will fix that problem for you. This dirt, yeah, we'll probably come through and clean these up as well. Good to bring that texture back on sometimes, because some things you don't get, but they might actually be something that needs to stay. So like this could be a vein pulling it up, and we use the texture to go, oh, do we want to keep it or not? Not a vein, it's just light hitting it a bit differently. We've got a bit of a dark spot there. Yeah, could be bruises, birthmarks, things like that. Birthmarks generally I'd leave, depends on what the purpose of the shot is. Up this dirty backdrop here. Still see a few spots, but like I said, a lot of times with the background, I won't do it with this one, but there's another shot that I'll be editing after this that I will be doing it for, where I actually redo the whole background. So I would make a fake one, but when it's just a plain white like this, there's no need to go to that extra effort. Sometimes things like this, if you keep a bit of these textures, it makes more sense. Looking at solid flat white doesn't seem real when you look at it. Not a long, difficult process. I mean, this wall could definitely be. Oops. Also, keep your screen clean. Every so often you'll see me do this where it doesn't make sense, and I've got to give my screen another clean. Oh, so much. Man, this is going to make for a terrible thumbnail for anyone that's scrolling through the Twitch streams. Yay! It's an editor playing with white space. I'm not going to do too much. It's been really, really rough at the moment. Okay, so that's nice and easy. I'm not gonna. Oh yeah, we'll do this one as well. Okay, that's that. That's nice and easy. Okay, now you see all that stuff I did. It's all still here. Now the reason is because it's a physical, it's also a texture, so we need to come through and same thing on the texture. But we will start again at the face. Okay. Okay, so we've got some nice detail in here, and what we've done is, because we've taken away these sort of shadows and deviations, what we can do, find an area like this and sample. What we're trying to do is we're trying to keep this looking real. We don't want to go and take some flat, smooth area. Whoops. On your texture layer, we don't want to take and sample from here because we're not taking the color. See, then we will all of a sudden end up with a dead space. We want to keep this this skin texture. So we just find an area that's similar, not too close, that will fit in and make sure we've still got some detail there, and then fixed. A lot of the way we used to do it, it used to be sometimes you take a layer of the skin, duplicate it, you blur it, and then you blend it in yourself. And what happens is all of these details become softer. You get that bit of a glow on the skin, but you lose a lot of the realism from it, which for me, I'd rather not. I'd rather keep as much of. We're just going through finding little bits that you think would be a little bit nicer if they weren't there. Usually this is things like either pimples or just these natural deviations in sort of skin cell size and pores and things like that. She's got great skin, so we don't have to worry too much. Instead, we keep real and honest as possible, especially for like portfolios and things like that too. There's an argument either direction. Okay, well, we should be editing this as drastically as a lot of magazines do, so that and she's using these images in her portfolio to promote herself. She's showing them at as what the end product may come out like, depending on who's editing the images, you know. But I feel it's, yeah, I mean that depends. That's not incorrect. For me though, I feel it's a little bit better if they're closer to what they actually look like, because then you know, maybe the studio or the magazine doesn't have access to people that can edit it in the right way to do it justice, or you know. Okay, so this is all looking nice. So we've only done a little bit here, but you'll see when I pop this on and off, the difference there. If you looked at that straight away, you wouldn't necessarily, well, you wouldn't feel like anything's been done. It is lit and colored quite nice already, but yeah, so just that little difference there does quite a lot. Okay, so we've got, we could do, there might be hairs and things on the shirt. I'm not going to sit, there's no need to come and smooth this out, because it's not something where we're trying to sell the clothing or anything like that. Don't need to take moles away. Normally I wouldn't, but because this is a very clean model and clean shot, doing it so we see a little bit more difference. Okay, so that's where that bit of light down here came from. We've got a bit of texture in that wall. Okay, so we can, you know, scars, anything like that, it's all the same process. So I'm just going to color here because of that light region, and then we can do the same for the texture. Sometimes it takes a couple of passovers just to make sure everything's smooth and fits in. So we'll do this. We'll take all of these out, so there's more of a difference. But yeah, like I said, I wouldn't normally remove moles. I think moles and freckles are part of your look. Leave these ones on the neck. So wrinkles and lines. The way I tackle those is I will use the clone tool. Shortcut is the S. Clone stamp. Set this down to about 10%. And just on the color layer, on the texture. We're just taking an area next to it, doing a couple of, okay, and we'll do the same for the color. That down ever so slightly. We don't need much. Under the eyes are a similar area, but I think for this shot, that works. I don't want to take these lines out, because then you'll find that people's eyes suddenly look drastically different and start to not look themselves. Whoops. H for the patch tool. Heal. Oh, what do I? Sorry, J. J for the heal tool. Okay, we'll do a quick run through over the background there. Like a lot of these texture bits, I mean that belongs, but we want to get rid of these sort of horrible black things. and maybe these larger patches. We're probably better off zooming out a little bit so we don't have to move around so much. See, like this texture is all part of it. This is yucky. I think the order that you do stuff really is up to you. See, now our spots are looking funny because the texture's trying to grab, like the texture's made up of contrast, like white versus black. And because we now don't have any dark colors there, it's stretching and pulling on colors to make that texture. Similar to you've tried using an unsharp mask and you've played with the values and you push it way too far, you get things start to glow and have a little line around them, white line around them. Same things happen. Okay, so because we're quite close, we're just going to go for the stretch over, line that up. So, and we don't need to be so fussy about those because, like I said, when you pull out, you're not going to see those areas. What's happening there? Oops. Yep, I've been running my computer through a bit today, so starting to lag a little. Never happened to me before until I started trying to stream. Okay, we've got a big chunk here. We're not worried about the colors, so we don't have to worry about matching this up. We're just taking the texture over. Gives us no problem at all. So one of the cool things about doing this separation. So for that overlap, the smaller the area you sample, the easier it is to get it right on. See, I'm like a pixel or two just off to the left. Not ideal, but if I go a little bit, well, zooming in as well will help, but if I keep the area small, it's easier to find a matching angle. Much better. And select much larger areas, sample from space. Because this doesn't, for the most part, doesn't actually have a texture, it's meant to be just white. We don't need to worry about how far or how close we're sampling. So that's why we're able to do a bigger selection. Just got to pay attention that we don't see any sort of texture repeating itself. If you sample from areas too close to each other, you start seeing. I starts to notice these. Wow, this is. Remember the wall being that messy. Okay, almost there. Got those little ones in close. Because once you've seen me do this once, then it's exactly the same for the rest of the shot. In the next couple of weeks, hopefully, I'll be getting out, recording, possibly streaming. Or two, which would be good, and then coming back to a day later. Then I'll get you guys to start trying to help me with themes for shoots and to stream. Not quite sure how that will work. Start with it probably going to be just through the phone. Someone carrying it, following what's happening. Strapping it to the top of the camera. Yeah, it means that you guys should be able to ask, hopefully can ask questions and stuff while we're shooting, make suggestions. We've got the viewers going, the model can answer some questions. Yeah, okay. So we've got that. Because we worked on the little details, from a distance you won't see a big change back and forth. But up in on the skin, I mean this looks smooth, but we haven't done, that's in shot, you know, that's already as it was. And with this so no real scars or anything like that. Back to the face. Whoops. Okay, so just only a few things we nice and eat. Okay, so now we're going to look at just punching this out a little bit more. Okay, so we're going to do a bit of dodging and burning. So come down. I like to burn first, and what burning does is a old sort of photography term from when we used to do things film, and it's where when you're projecting your negatives or your transparencies photo paper, you're letting more light hit, and the way the papers work, the more light that hits the paper, the more dark it's going to. We're going to look for, we want to make sure we've got some separation between the jaw and the neck, not much. So with this burn tool, we want to be on mid-tones. We're taking the middle range of colors and tones, and we're trying to add a bit of exposure on that to make them a bit darker. Not exposure in terms of like a camera where that means letting more light in, because we're dealing at it from the other end in theory, where it's the camera taking in light to make the negative, which so everything's inverse. Anyway, we want a nice soft edge, and we're just coming through and just following that line. So even that one stroke made that little bit of a difference. Being able to see the jawline. Through. I'll push these a little, just so it's obvious what's going on. So some parts might be a bit more drastic than I would normally do, but it's just to demonstrate the point. Got some quite, not harsh makeup, but it's a lot of contrast in it, which is good. But it means it's less work for us to do. Just finding areas of darkness and taking them a little bit. We don't want to do that. And the eyes, eyebrows, just to make them that just as we go. We've actually not that it was needed, but it kind of feels like we've lost a bit of weight on the face, and that's only because we've been able to define that jawline that was receiving equal light. Because we're in a white studio, we've got light coming up and bouncing from underneath, whereas normally if you were outside, this would be quite a solid light, because a solid shadow, sorry, because we'd have our light coming from the top here. Right? You can take this, just a portion of this, sharpen that peak out a little. Same where we've got a bit of spots there. Okay, and then doing the same. So we, a lot of the stuff I do, which I'm not going to be doing on Twitch, streaming on Twitch anyway. There's a lot more skin showing, and this process can take a little bit longer, but it's my brush is a little bit small there, and it's so we're just pulling things back by darkening them. We're emphasizing the three-dimensional aspects of everything. Now we will go to dodge, which is the same thing but opposite. Okay, we're doing mid-tones again, and this now is just adding light instead of shadow. Okay, so the shadow pulls things away from us and light pulls things forward. that's how that's what gets us to see that this is forehead is three-dimensional, and we can see that the front of the forehead is almost sort of paneled. Come in where there's some highlights, bring things forward a little bit by lightening them up. You don't want to go too much, because you'll end up making things look too sharp, hard, and sometimes wet as well. And pop this on and off every so often, just so you can see if you're happy with the change. So you see the difference that's made in the face. Still the same person, but we've managed to just make everything pop that little bit. And that in itself also kind of gives you a smoother feeling. We do the same for the arms. We've got and remember as well, we are working on the color layer. All right, we're not working on a detail layer. If you work on a detail layer, a whole different thing happens. Okay, we're just finding we can lighten up areas too if we feel they're a bit dark, but for the most part, it's just to find highlight area. Bring things forward a little. Okay, we could go and do this with the shirt as well. Okay, so we can take these brights, white, blue, working nice and low on the exposure amount, just 10%. Sometimes you'll change it back and forth depending on what you're editing and how contrasty it already is. In sort of my safety, it allows me to, it takes a bit more time, but be a little bit more accurate. This one will be a nice, obvious. The dodging as well. We'll be adding quite a bit of shape depth to all these lines. And you don't you don't 100% notice it as you're doing it, but you'll see really see the result kind of pop. But this is not necessarily something that you want to do. You might want this shirt to look flatter and smoother. I kind of like the texture, extra sort of dimension in it. Just taking these darker areas and over them, making them that little bit darker to contrast with the lighter bits. Okay, so now if we focus on the shirt here, so that shirt's now popping a lot more as well. Okay, we've got the arms, leg, face, a bit of difference. Okay, now then I would say for this one, I would go in and do my sort of coloring touch. So I duplicate our color layer twice. On the first one, I'll go hue. I don't always name these, it's just you guys can follow along a bit better what layers I'm playing with. Can you see? Yes, you can see my layers. And the other one, I'll call it what it is, it's a soft light. But it's essentially giving us a bit of color. Okay, so starting with the hue, we just go Control U. I'm taking this all the way down. Sorry, I should have called that saturation. Now, as a standard, my go-to to start with is I go Control L for my levels. Oh, layers selected. Control L. Just make sure my blacks are black and my whites are white. Okay, we're not affecting that original blur layer, color tone layer. just playing with this one, and my go-to here is about 25%. So you already get a bit of interesting effect there, where everything's still got color. That color's become much more not pastel-y, but a bit more on the gray side of things. It does nice things with the skin as long as you've got a good color balance to start with. And then this one, obviously we're going to turn this into a soft light, and we're going to put it, we'll go 25% to start. Now if you have a look at the two of these now, see the difference there? So we've actually, we've managed to take out some of the color, but increase the contrast at the same time. Okay, and now we could say in our saturation layer, we could apply a mask if we wanted to, and it be for our brush tool. Now, I've been drawing, so these are no good. You just want your normal brush tool, something soft-ish. Oh, we can go sort of 30-40%. Square brackets to increase and decrease your brush size, and make sure that's at 100. And all we're doing is we're going to remove, with the mask, painting black onto the mask, we're going to remove the black and white layer from the clothing, just to bring out the color. Want to make sure we're not going onto the skin. And what that does is that brings that color back out, but we're keeping the skin at this nice color tone. I want to avoid the skin. If we go into the skin, you'll see the difference. There we go. All those orangey reds now popping back in. This is just a thought. It all depends on what you're editing. Oops. Now I'm painting. You gotta see. Now I'm painting directly on the layer. Here's another trick that I learned from the drawing. If you hold down R, drag, you can rotate the canvas for working on. It's not actually rotating the image itself. You're rotating your workspace. Not being super accurate. Demonstrate. Do. Okay, now coming into the white, it's not going to matter too much, but we haven't adjusted any of the color, so there's a chance that there is still some color in the white, and I think there is. It's got a yellow, kind of slightly yellow. I'm fine with that. Not often that I end up with my whites being white. They're usually on the slightly warmer side. Yeah, now we can see this. We've adjusted our colors on the skin tones, but we've kept this bright, punchy shirt. Okay, now this can be adjusted too. You might want to go less, say maybe on the saturation layer, you might drop it to 10, just for that slight little bit of a difference, or you might want to go harder, take it up to 40. But when you change that layer, you also will normally change your soft light layer as well, because what it does is it also brings color back in. So this is going to be really contrasty, but keeping that color. This might work for what it is you're trying to do, it might not. This is just my sort of style of doing things. I just like having these colors. Okay. And then a couple of things. So the first one, our texture layer. What we can do is if we duplicate this layer, we're now doubling the amount of texture adding in, and that texture is made up of contrast, you know, lights and darks. That's what's giving the 3D element to the spots that we were editing color layer. Okay? So if we duplicate this, we're going to end up with a rather strong, slightly ugly sharpening effect. Okay, so just Control J on your texture layer. Well, actually, this one, because she's not super close, but you can see here we've got this halo that we were talking. This is way too sharp. I used to do this at about 25%. Just to, and you can see the difference it makes here. But I feel like a lot of what I've been seeing, I mean, you can see just from adding this little 25% how important this skin texture is. Really kept it very real. We might go a little bit further. $40. Yeah. Okay, so we're going from that to that. So really this process, ignoring that annoying thing with the background, I think for me it's actually quicker to redo that background or sort of loosely paint over it. But this is probably a 10 minute process, 8 to 10 minutes I'd say. Takes me a little bit long at the moment because I'm still getting used to the whole drawing thing, but yeah, but for me that's where I'd put that one. Look at the difference. Still more things that could be done. But if this was going large, going big, we'd be looking at the hair as well. And we would do that before we've gotten to this stage, so we would have just been working with these two layers. And that's a matter of fixing the color underneath here and then doing the same thing with and just sampling from around and going on. Where you start getting stuck and getting close, then that's where you bring in the clone tool, the clone stamp. Usually I try and avoid it though, just because it softens and muddies things out a bit. We do what we can first without patching and healing. Maybe another thing we could do on here is come in, do a bit of dodging and burning on the hair. So we could dodge, no real highlights in there, so we can come through with a thin small brush, take some areas and bring them out a little. So we might put our exposure up to say 25, just find some areas with lighter hair that we can come in and pull them out a bit more. Just to make it, you know, a little bit more dynamic, a bit more variation. And the safest way to do it is to just go with pieces that are already different, brighter. And we're not affecting the texture of it as well. That's because we're just working on our color layer. Take this bit that's already bright, we can punch that out a little bit more. Okay, so these are obviously extensions. You can see the color change. Fine. We could take We could take some of this and bring it in as well. Slowly with the color, working the want to do the other way around. Okay, so we want to take this area and sample with the colors. Okay. Okay, so now we're starting to build up our color underneath slowly. Want it to feel natural. We could also use the stamp tool to do this, the clone stamp. Okay, we're just working. We'll maybe bump it to 20%. We know we want it to go darker. But you see what we don't want is that hard edge there. Now what it's missing is texture. Okay, so this is where it would be a little harder. Want to take patch tool. The reason I say harder is because we want to try, not to make it look like everything's being edited and duplicated, but we want sort of areas like this. Take one of these spaces, bring in some hair strands there. Now this takes a lot more playing around with. This is not something I normally do. Yeah, we're getting these dark bits here. It's because of the way it's colored underneath. Okay, so we'd want to come in and do this with a bit more, paying a bit more attention to the color and not texture. Not the best example, but to be honest, I would probably actually come in and paint the color into that. But you know, as a thought, that's not terrible. What the main thing that's popping out for it is because it's rather straight and the rest of her hair is staggered. So we'd probably play with that a little. Whether that's a matter of playing with the colors underneath, do an aggressive stamp to 40%. Take color from here and bring it in. Up a little. So with the pen I can do these nice thin strokes if I change the area sampling and up a little. Okay, so that's better. And then we would look at this texture and work on making sure this follows through correctly. But yeah, hard to see for me. Yeah, I'm still a little contrasty. So what I might do is go on my levels on our base one, just bring up the mid-tones a little. Just slightly. Maybe go 20 on this instead of 20. Yeah, that's better. A little bit warmer. Yeah. So yeah, that took me a while, but it's walking through. A bit different. I'm going to leave that one there. I'm getting way too hot today. the weather here is stinking hot. But yeah, so the main one here was our frequency separation. Where the reason it's important is because that's what we're playing with most of the time. So we are before, and then we've got our color and tone layer combined with our texture layer, which has been edited. Okay, so we've kept and sampled all these good solid skin textures, skin cell textures, and brought in our tonal drop, saturation drop, soft light, and then our sharpness. We don't need to on this because it's already naturally quite a sharp shot, but we could select the eye area and the lasso tool. I usually have a 20 pixel feather on them, and just duplicate that texture copy up the top there with Control J, and just at 25%, just to make that eye a little bit more poppy. But yeah, that's your frequency separation and the standard process for editing. Everything else I'll be doing from now on is pretty much going to be that same process. There's just going to be different scenarios here and there. What I'll be looking at possibly tomorrow when I come and edit again will be say there's two more I want to, so we'll do this one. What is that? This is interesting. The music I've got going has got shutter, like I presume you can hear it, hopefully. A shutter click and a focus beep in the background. I didn't expect. Yeah, so this is another photo that we'll be looking at today or so. A little bit closer on the face. The focus isn't perfect. We're about 2 centimeters too far in terms of where the main focus point is. But with that frequency separation, we can bring all the skin texture back out. We can fix up the slightly larger parts. We can play a bit with this hair too, in terms of how it's depth, making it pop. And then the other one is so these are all of Michelle, of the same model. Really like this one. With this one, what we'll be doing is we'll be replacing the entire background. We will reproduce this. Not really a difficult process. The hardest part, which is not hard with this shot, is separating her from the background. Again, skin is real nice and easy to work with. Legs are a little different, but yeah, this will be nice and easy. But we can also, the other cool thing about doing this, if we create our own background, this is not one I would really try and change the color of the background itself. I keep it kind of close. It makes it safer for when we're doing that sort of a cutout process. But there's also those blues coming into the shot off the skin and things. But it means that we can throw in graphics, graffiti, or logos, brands, whatever, in behind her, and she's nicely easy. But yeah, that's what we'll be looking at the next day or two. But yeah, one more time, that's our before and after. Some shots are much easier than others. Some shots are a much quicker process. This one, we end up with less of a difference because it was already quite a nice one to start with, like in terms of how it was all set up, lit and everything. But yeah, hopefully that gave you guys a bit of information, was a bit helpful. Chuck us a follow, that'd be appreciated. I'll be trying to do these every couple of days. I'll probably be saying the same thing over and over again, unfortunately, just because it's what I do. But if someone new pops along, I'd love just to be helping them out, giving them some bit of info. There's also plenty of other ways to do your editing. A lot of people are using Lightroom now. It's a bit faster, but I like to sort of get in there, and that's where I find Photoshop a bit better. I can really just get in and focus on things, one thing at a time. Yeah, and then once we've got a few followers, I'll be looking at doing streaming some shoots, which would be awesome. So yeah, thanks for stopping by. Hope you learned something. And yeah, awesome. Cheers. See ya.